interact with server side APIs, how to deal with API, interact with server side API in our applications. So we created a simple React project, and yesterday I showed you some events like submit, on, change, how to deal with them. Now after understanding that touch events and all, so we need to know how to deal with interaction with APIs. So server side APIs, how we can manage, means how React can interact with the API. So one extra event you have learned here is touch event, how to deal with the touch event. Have you tried that? Anyone tried the touch events? Have you tried able to achieve that touch events practice data? So because that is what actually the new option you need to understand. How do we deal with the touch event? Now one more option is how you can consume the API and use that in React. So in React, how we can consume. Configuring API already we done. So we will see how you can consume API and interact with the data. Consume API and interact with the data in backend. Actually, React.js inbuilt don't have any library for doing that. React.js can use general API library. React.js can use the general API library. What is the general API library? So React.js can use jQuery Ajax library. That means it can use jQuery Ajax library. React.js can use jQuery Ajax library for communicating with the APIs, or it can use third-party libraries like, so we have libraries like Axios. We have a library like WG fetch. You have like fetch. These are the basic libraries. By using those libraries, React.js can interact. By using these libraries, React.js can interact with API. So how you have done in your jQuery, the same approach you need to follow. Now we will see one example today, how we can consume the API, connect with the API and interact with the API in our React application. But for that, first you need API ready. That means first you need the API ready. So, and you need to start the API. Once API is ready and you start the API, then you can easily handle it. So configure and interact with them. Let's see one simple example how we can deal. Already, so we have created a server-side API. We have created a server-side API to connect with MongoDB in our projects. Let's go to our previous project. In our previous project, we created, in our previous project, that is full stack project, right? Actually, we created an Angular project, and in the Angular project, so we are having a server side. API created. Let's see the Angular project what we created. Full stack, I think. Okay, full stack web. Yeah, in this full stack, if you remembered already, we have server side. So we have the server side options created. That means we have a server folder, and in the server folder, so we have the connections with the database. We learned how to create the connection, and we have REST API. This REST API is having the methods get products, and it is having like interacting, insert, update, and all. We can use the same, or we can create a separate server side interaction here. Separate server side interaction here. So let's see a separate server side interaction here, because already we learned this, but we will create here so that one more time you will get an idea how to handle communication with APIs. So, and how do we configure server side? Let's install some packages. First, create a folder server. Okay, in the server folder, we will use some server side coding. That means we will write some server side coding, right? How to handle, right? How do we deal with that? Right. Generally, once I haven't uploaded nodes, React.js nodes is not uploaded. React.js nodes is not uploaded into Classroom. In the Classroom, React.js nodes not uploaded. Our class.
Oh.
And a few React. Today I will upload them. Okay.
Not
I uploaded
over.
up to the Angular integration, right? Yes. Today I will upload
Not
the
over
complete
now.
React applications example, up to the example, so that you can practice, right? I will upload entire notes today so that you can practice with all this up to API what we have done, right? Right. Now, in this up to creating of API, we already done. Configuring and creating API, we already done. So creating API, we will do that now. Our database, already we have a database in our MongoDB Compass. Let's go to MongoDB Compass. And in the MongoDB Compass, this is the command line, this is the GUI tool for creating and managing the databases. Right. And here we will connect to the database. Already we have some databases. So let's go to a database and interact with any specific database. Right. So already I have a database, some shopping DB. In that we have a table called TBL products. In that we have 3 records: product ID, name, price, in stock, like details are present. You can use any. already previous projects, what we have done, you can try them. So we have Amazon DB also created. In that we have some data, product ID, name and price. Some records are present. Let's take this. We have a Amazon DB. In that we have a table called TBL products. We need to create a UI for this. And we need to interact with it. We need to interact with it. Generally, how we can manage, how we can handle. So what are the options we need to configure? Let's see how we can handle and interact with that. So first, database is Amazon DB. So let's go to server. And here, the packages, in order to connect with the database, you need to install some packages. So what are the packages required? npm install MongoDB. We need to install MongoDB. This already we learned. And npm install Express. We need to install Express. Another one, we need to install Express is also installed. Install body parser. We need to install body parser. Body parser is required for translating your data into JSON. Another one, npm install. You need to install CORS. So because cross origin issues come, you can install this CORS also, CORS. So these are all the libraries we need to install. So first, what are the libraries you have to install? So we need to create a server-side API. For that, you have to install npm install MongoDB, and you need to install body parser, and you need to install Express and CORS. These are initially required. Once you install all these three, all these options are configured and installed, then we will create an API. So let's create a new file in server, api.js. And here we need to write the logic. So where, so Mongo client is equal to require MongoDB. In MongoDB, the Mongo client. Then where Express, it require Express. And where body parser, so you require body parser. And where CORS, so require CORS. All these are required. So after that, we will create app.get. That means we need to create where app is equal to Express. Okay, where URL is equal to, so MongoDB colon 127.0.0.1 colon 8080. So that is the this is 270, yeah, 27017. That is the location for MongoDB. Okay. And we need to create API app.get /get products. Get products is an API method. It will use a callback function and it will get request and a response. And it should connect with the database. That means we have to use connection with the database. So Mongo client dot connect with URL and use a callback function. This all we know. It will return error and it will return in client object. And so if it is successful in connection, if no error, then we need to create a database object is equal to, so we have DB client object dot db and the database name Amazon DB. Amazon DB. That is the database name you need to configure. Next step here. So the database object have to use a collection called TBL products. In that we have to use a find. So find dot to array and a function. It should run error if there is a problem in reading. These all are already discussed. Not error. If not error, then response dot send documents. Okay. We have to send the documents if there is no problem. And start the server. So app.listen on port number some 8080 and console.log says server started. Okay, that message should display. Now currently I just given only the get request. For get request we don't need body parser and cors. For post and put request we need. Cors required sometimes. If cors is blocked in browser it will not work. So we have to use both of them. We need to say app.use. App.use, it should use cors. So that means this one line is enough which will enable cors for your project. That means it allows cross origin sharing. And app.use, we have to use body parser dot URL encoded. So extended is true. Extended is true. And app.use and body parser dot JSON. It will convert the data into JSON. This is required especially when you are reading and writing the data, because this is responsible for converting your data into JSON whenever data is posted into your application. So body parser will translate the data into JSON format and it is responsible for converting the data into JSON. So your API is currently ready for fetching the data. Let's test that. So we have to cd server and node api.js. So server started and let's make a request. Localhost or http://127.0.0.1 8080 get products. The data is coming. So good. Your API is successfully configured. Now in our previous examples, what we have done is, in our previous examples, we have consumed this in our Angular. I showed you how to consume in Angular. Now we have to consume this in our React application. Any technology to consume, it just needs this URL. And it needs the API related library. And you saw that in Angular, we used HTTP client library. But now in React.js, you can use the jQuery Ajax library. You can use external libraries like Axios, Web, WhatWG, Fetch, only Fetch. Fetch is related to window object actually, window.fetch. So we can use all of them. I will show you different libraries, how they are used in real-time projects. So we can use our general traditional jQuery library. So let's see how to do that. I will server started. I will go to the project now. Keep that server running, okay? And in our public SRC folder, I am creating a new file. We are creating a React component. So I will say product.js. The component is product.js. Okay. In this product.js, we need to create a complete UI for interacting. For that, two important options are there. First, in order to use jQuery related library, what you have to do is, in order to use the jQuery library, you have to make sure that, jQuery is installed in your project. If jQuery is installed, then only you can use it. So make sure that jQuery is installed in your project, and or you can get the jQuery from online CDN link. How to install jQuery for the project you already know. So because already you know install. Now if jQuery is available, then you can link that jQuery in your script. So you can link jQuery in your script. So here I am linking script source is equal to, so it is in node modules. In that we have jQuery dist jQuery.js. So jQuery is linked to our page. Okay. And here in the file, we have to import all the jQuery library and use. Generally, to do that, I told you we can create class component, functional components we can import. So first I am importing React from React library. We are importing React from React library. So that will be available inside this React core library. So React and React DOM. Okay. We have to import that React, and we need to import jQuery also. That means import $$ from jQuery. You have to import $$ from jQuery. The $ is nothing but it indicates that all jQuery functions are imported. All the jQuery functions also imported into the library. Okay. So we are importing jQuery library. Now let's create a component. So export, so default and class, so product component, that extends React component. Okay. Now here we will define a constructor with the properties to maintain the state. So here I am defining the state like this dot state. Okay. Now what should happen is here we need to create a method. We need to create a method and have to deal with the method. Now what we will do is we will write a method here called fetch. This is our own method. This fetch method should contain all the logic for connecting with the API, accessing the API and storing in the data. That means now what you can do is simply you can use here. First, we will create a context. And we will name this context. As context is equal to this. What is the advantage of, you can directly use this. This is another technique that current class related members are now accessible with the help of context. Instead of using this, you can use this context. It's your wish, you can do anything. Now here we need to write the request for fetching data from API. Already you learned in jQuery, I told you in jQuery how to fetch data from API. We have to use $AJAX. We can use $AJAX or getJSON. $AJAX, it is expecting URL from where data is coming. Data is coming from http://127.0.018080 and get products. The data is coming from this location. Okay, what is the method? We have to define the method. Method is get method. This is all jQuery, and you know in jQuery already I given you how to use AJAX methods, how to configure the AJAX methods, the same. And the method here is expecting success function. That means on success, a function will fire up. This function will get the response data. Response means the data. That means whatever data is there, the data is now collected here. That means now response is an collection. It contains the data. Response is a collection, it contains the data. Now what we need to do is, we need to get the data and display the data. And we need to store the data. Remember, you can access one record, you can access multiple records, and we can display. It depends on your requirement. If you are expecting multiple records, very simple. What you have to do is, here you don't need to create a individual, directly create products. Products is an array. In the state we created products array, it is expecting collection of data. That means now response is going to return this array. Now what we have to do is we have to store this. So that response we have to store in the state. That means we can access context.setState. Context is just like this reference. Set state, and into the state we have products array. That products, that's it. That means whatever response data is present, that response data will be stored in products. It is same like your jQuery. It is everything same to jQuery. Only the difference is, so here we are configuring by using an AJAX method, and we are rendering here itself. That means we are rendering here itself. We are storing all the result in this state. We are storing all the result in that state object. In the state object, we are going to store the result. So that means it is going to store the result inside that state object. So what we need to do now is we need to access that data and print it. Means data is ready. We need to access and print that data. So that means usually in the class, this is the class. And in the class, we usually require, this is the method, the fetch method. Render method is going to return. So what it is going to return? So it is going to return a product details. I will keep here. So product details. And in the product details, so we are configuring a table. Let's create a table. And table is defined with some width. Some width as some 400. And border is equal to 1. Okay, now inside the table, we will keep table header. So TR and TH, that is product ID. And another table header is name. And another table header is price. we are accessing the product ID, name and price. All the details we are configuring. Now, after defining this, so we need to create a table body. In this table body, we want to repeat the row. For every product inside this collection, we need to repeat the row. So generally, how you can display multiple details. How to display multiple details in the last session I told you. So here in the body section, we need to write an expression. This dot state dot products dot map. This map uses a product which will get all the product details. And what we will do is, so we will return directly. We will do one thing. We will directly return the data. That means it is going to return a row. That means it is going to map is going to return a row. It is returning a row. And row contains, as per the rules I told you, we need a key. Key is nothing but key is coming from product ID. Product ID. It is coming from product. And here we need 3 cells. First cell, it should display product ID, product ID. So it should display product ID. Second cell, it should display. So it should display the product name, product.name. And third cell, it should display the product price, product.price. That is done. That means we are generating a row and it is going to return that row. So that is done. That means we are configuring the data and displaying the data. Now everything is ready. The product component is ready. And the product component is fetching the data from API and using. And in React.js, currently we are using a simple jQuery technique. By using a jQuery technique only, we are accessing the data and using the data. And one more point, it's not complete because I defined fetch. But when this fetch function will execute, you can write on button click. You can write on any event. For example, in next session, I will tell you the life cycle of React. Actually, when a component is loaded, at that time I want to fetch this data. You can write on button click or anywhere you can configure it. But when component is loaded, I want to fetch the data. Then we can use a method called component did mount. Component did mount indicates what should happen when component is ready. So it should call this dot fetch, that fetch method. You can write on button click, but component did mount is like when it is loaded, automatically it will fetch the data and it will display the data. And it will display the data in this location. Now we need to use this product component in our page. So in index page, we are linking here. Product.js. And we need to render this to the root element. So the product component have to use React DOM dot render. It should render. So the product component into the root location. Document get element by ID into root. So that is ready. So your component is in C now. When I start this index in the data. Now here some issues are there. So let's check here. So that means in the console, what are the problems here? And you can see that it is showing some issue. Like, so in that, this is not correct. Of course, it is not correct because actually the products is a state object. Object means we have to use colon. Whatever response data is coming, into the response data. Set state products is an object property. Into object property, we have to use this data. Okay, we need to send the data. Let's run this and see now. And it is having an option here. Export not defined, exports not defined. That means generally, so this exports not defined. That means the component we created, it is not exported. It is not exported into another location. For example, what is the problem? In which line we have? XML HTTP request is having a problem. XML HTTP request problem means it may be related to the CORS issues, cross origin. That means on fetching the data, it is having a problem. Let's check the API whether it is running or not. Export default class, it should export it. And our API is properly working or not. Once we will check that. So here API, it is working fine, and API URL correctly configured or not. Here API URL is correctly configured. There is no problem in accessing the data and using the data. Now one more option is we have to make sure that this index.html, the product.js, the jQuery library we are using. It may be related to the order of the library. Once we check that. Exports not defined for that. Were not defined. Where is that required? So sometimes the problem will be related to the library we are using. It's the library order. Once we will check that. Require is not defined in product. Achha. React component is also imported and configured. The jQuery library is imported. Right? The class, fine. Actually, the problem, the point is nothing but actually what happened is in our index page, we are directly using this library. We are directly using this library, which is already importing that library into the page. That means in the index page, we are using this library which is already importing that library. That means the jQuery library is already imported. So it is asking that it is already imported, you don't need to import again. So that is only the point. That means React component, because generally when we use an application environment, we will see in another example. In an application environment, what we do is we maintain all the library offline. Means we will download and install all these and maintain offline. When we maintain offline, we will not link all these libraries here. What we will do is we will directly import here. So that we don't need to link. Currently, we are already linking them. That is the reason it says that you don't need to import again. So we are not importing again. Already they are imported, and you can see now the data is coming and displayed. That means whatever data is there, it is accessed and it is displayed. So I will remove this style. Here we have, and you can see that the data is coming from an API and it is displaying the data. This is fetching the data in React application. But React application is not using any special library. What it is doing is it is using jQuery library. With the help of jQuery library, so we are consuming the data, we are accessing the data and using the data. Now by using the same library, we can submit the data. That means we are fetching the data. We can submit the data. And we can also use third parties. Now which one is recommended? That means in many situations, we don't recommend our developers. To use the jQuery. So we always ask them to use the third-party libraries. So third-party libraries are more lightweight, more faster in communication. So that's the reason, depending on the performance, so we need to use. So we need to refer and we need to use. Now currently, we have just used the option for fetching the data. We can also do that by using, this is jQuery. Without jQuery, there is another option called fetch. By using fetch, we can get the data and we can handle the data. Actually, currently we saw jQuery Ajax. Instead of that, we can use window fetch method. Window have a fetch method. By using that fetch method, you can handle it. So that means many times you will see people using this window fetch method because it is generally native to browsers. Then it can easily work across various browsers. So that is the reason people always use this fetch or any third-party library. So see what I am doing now. I am removing this fetch function. So that means component mount. I am removing this. That means now data is not coming. And I am removing this fetch also. This is manually written. We have written that function. I will remove that. And what I will do is on mount, mount, you can directly use a fetch method. And fetch is a DOM method. Directly DOM method it is. That means virtual DOM method. You don't need any jQuery or anything here. Just fetch. And fetch from where you want to fetch the URL http://127.0.0.1:80/get products. That is where I want to fetch. Okay. After fetching, it uses then method. If it is successful, it will get response. That response data will be returned in JSON. You need to convert in JSON. That is why many times people ask this question. What is problem with fetch? Fetch is okay, good, it is native. But problem with fetch is the data returned should be explicitly converted into JSON. You have to convert into JSON. After to use it. After converting the data to JSON, you have to use it. But third-party libraries directly return the data in JSON. jQuery has written data directly in JSON, but not fetch. So it have to be converted into JSON. After that, what we do, then we will get that response data. We can get the response data and we can put this response data. Then it uses a callback function. That response data can be applied to state. This set state so it is configured that because actually this fetch requires the fetch belongs to this response is not required. You don't need that response, right? Directly fetch will work without any extra library. And you can see it is fetching the data and showing. You don't need to import any extra library. You don't need any extra library. Directly fetch will work with general window object of browser. Browser window object have a fetch method. So through the fetch method, it can access the data and it can return the data. That is by default available to handle. So now, if anyone asks which one will you prefer, using using jQuery or using fetch? So we will always prefer fetch because it is native. But we in real time, so other than fetch, we ask people to use third party like Axios. Axios. What is advantage of Axios? So third party library. So Axios, what, WG and all. What is advantage of this third party library is Axios like third party library by default return the data in JSON format so that we can directly interact with it. Now we will see one example how to use this Axios third party library. You have seen two with jQuery Ajax and window fetch. Axios, now with this we will create both methods, how we can get the data, how we can post the data. That means we will create an API and fetch the submit the data. Because Axios is a separate library, you have to install this library to use. So one of the with React is lightweight, and for every interaction, it needs some additional library which you have to download and use. So it depends on a lot of third-party libraries. For everywhere, you need a lot of third-party libraries. Now with Axios, we can easily get the data, post the data, and handle interaction with the data. So we will see now how to use this Axios method for interacting with that. That is also very simple. Actually, what you have to do is we have to import the Axios library and we have to use that Axios library. That means we need to link Axios library in our project and you have to use it. That we will see in our next session, right? Tomorrow we will see. So tomorrow we are going to see a third party Axios with both get and post, how we can handle the interactions. So end-to-end integration, how it will work in React, we will see that. So up to this topic, whatever we learned, I will upload into the classroom. You can go through that. Right today, I will just now I will post the React documentation.
gone.